What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts from the side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys, Mr. Tad the Side. And Tad, we're in a pretty big weekend because free agency, the new league year starts on Tuesday, and here we are recording one of the few times actually on a Saturday, outside like the live stream, which obviously we had to do on a Saturday. This is usually one of the few rare occurrences where we record on the weekend, but actually works in our favor because we're getting some sort of updated news regarding free agency. So, I mean, we'll fill you in on that in case you haven't heard the news yet. But we're also going to be discussing some of our, free agency predictions as far as, who should sign where and just some realistic signings and just like cover free agency in today's episode. We're going to split it up into two parts. We're going to cover offense in today's episode. Then we're going to do a later episode covering the defense. But yeah, this should be exciting times because I mean, Tad, we talked about this all the time off air. I think probably a few times on the podcast as well, but just NFL free agency is probably the most active out of the big four when it comes to sports because it's like MLB. I mean, we had the Boris Ford that didn't sign until literally like last week. So it's
I love Scott Boras so much because he's a piece of shit and like he's just the worst type of person.
So it's like you have a lot of just delay. You don't have that anticipation, that excitement with MLB free agency. NBA free agency is not bad. You do get a lot of, big signings that happen right away. But NFL free agency, like literally you start hearing about things this weekend and about like, oh, this player's expected to sign with this team, but it's not official until Tuesday and all that stuff. And so it's just like, yeah, it's the rumors are going to start ramping up this weekend leading into Monday for sure. And then, of course, Tuesday is when it can all be official. And so, yeah, we're here with some predictions for today's episode. And yeah, should be some fun times, right, Dad?
100%. I don't know what you're talking about with rumors are about to start ramping up. They are ramping up.
No,
NFL free agency is insane. Like I read an article, slight spoiler alert for we're gonna talk about in this episode, but people are like, Kirk Cousins is apparently checking out Atlanta middle schools. It's like, how do you know that? It's like, who is checking out? Because it's not like he's touring. Because I remember when LeBron did this in LA, and it was like, oh, LeBron showed up at this like elite LA middle school. Okay, that's tangible proof. Apparently, like Kirk Cousins isn't touring; he's just looking into moving his family to Atlanta, and it's just like, how do you know? Are you like tracking his computer? Like his search history says like Atlanta middle schools elite or something like that. But no, it's just, it's absolutely like what you said is, the NBA, it's 4 or 5 players make a real difference. And after that, it's kind of like, just who cares? MLB, it's stretched out. I need to clarify. I love Scott Boras, not as the person, but just because MLB free agency was pretty dead. And now all of a sudden it's relevant again because the entire league hates him. That's why I love him, is because it's just like, okay, now things are getting going, 2 weeks before the season starts. But yeah, NFL free agency, there's nothing like it. Major implications. This is a very good free agency class. And obviously it's going to have massive fallout. It's going to massively affect the NFL draft. Like, I think this is the reason the Bears have yet to move off that first overall pick. I do believe the Bears after, late next week or the week after will finally either trade away that pick or trade Justin Fields. I think they're just waiting for all these dominoes to fall.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And we'll sort of get into all that. But before we get into all that, we definitely have to give a shout out to our great sponsors at Underdog Fantasy. I mean, they continue to be wonderful partners of ours. Really easy platform to use, really get into some betting action. I mean, just really easy to do. You just make anywhere between 2 and 5 different prop bet picks across any sport you can imagine, essentially. I know we're not in the NFL season right now, but we talked about this in our last episode. You're able to bet on the 40 times for a lot of the players during the combine. So, I mean, Underdog Fantasy has got you covered even on minuscule things like that are part of the sport. They got you covered. I don't doubt that they probably have some free agency predictions up there as well. But of course, you could bet on the NBA action happening right now, the NHL, MMA, boxing. When the MLB season starts in about a month or so, like you could bet on all that. But even with the MLB, they have some season-long bets that you can make as well. So it's not even just game by game. You can bet for the entire season. You got some prop bet picks, there as well for the entire season. So whatever you want to bet on, Underdog Fantasy seems to have you covered. So like I mentioned, you make anywhere between 2 and 5 different picks. The more picks you make, the more money you can potentially win. And guys, speaking of money, Underdog Fantasy wants you to make as much money as you can by giving you a lot of credit on their platform. Just use our promo code DESAI, DESAI, and you can double up on your initial deposit of $10 or more, up to $500. So, I mean, Tad, realistically or hypothetically, whatever you want to do there, if you were to put in $500 on their platform, use our promo code for the first time. I should specify that the first time or the initial deposit, you will match that. You will get that money matched dollar for dollar, and you could bet with $1,000 on their platform if you were to reach that maximum of $500. But anything in between there, as long as it's at least $10 and not higher than $500, they will match that dollar for dollar. So, I mean, yeah, they really want you to get on the platform, get into the fun, and it's just a really easy way to sort of just make some picks on things that you feel confident on. And just, yeah, use that promo code, DESAI, DESAI, to double up on your initial deposit of $10 or more, up to $500. I mean, Tad, it's a great platform. We love using them. And yeah, this is an easy promotion to do because we love it.
I really, and I say this every week, I really shouldn't say this in case any of our past partners come back and it's like, hey, we love to, reunite. They are my favorite partner we've ever had. And that is, I've had partners send me free stuff before. Who was it? Manscaped. Manscaped, I still use their trimmer to trim my beard. I like Underdog Fantasy more. I know I shouldn't say that, but it's true because they are just so user friendly. They're so better friendly. They're just a very generous betting site, which is an oxymoron and something I never thought I'd say, but they're just a great partner. And plus with March Madness coming up, I'm going to have to be very careful.
It's going to be quite literal madness, probably.
It's going to be, and you may see madness within me if I drop a few. Yeah. But I mean, come on, how often can you drop a bet on TCU basketball? Not often, but Underdog Fantasy's got that for you. By the way, Jameer Nelson Jr., take that over. Jameer Nelson's son, for those of you who don't know, is a guard for TCU. How awesome is that? But point being is Underdog Fantasy is an amazing sponsor. They will look after you just like they've been looking after us. Please use that promo code again, DESAI, to get started with them, because once you get started, it's going to be a lot of fun, and we can't wait to help you out to make some money.
That's so exciting. Can't even say it right. Like, I mean, that's how amazing it is.
Damn it. I was doing so well.
Oh, gosh. But yeah, guys, get into the action. It's a lot of fun. Use that promo code DESAI, DESAI. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Believe me, for sure. And you can use it on the website. You can use it on your mobile devices as well. Either platform, they really optimize it. So it's a very easy user experience compared to other platforms that I've used. So for sure, get in the action. It's a ton of fun. So, all right, Tad, let's get into this free agency talk here. But before we get to our actual topics that we want to talk about, there's a little bit of breaking news that happened today. There was actually,
hours ago.
News that was, I think it just happened a few hours ago. Exactly. Jerry Jeudy, no longer a member of the Denver Broncos. He was traded to the Cleveland Browns for a 4th-round pick and a 5th-round pick and a 6th-round pick of this year. And so, yeah, they're really just, I think, Chauncey Talese on our pod on the LAFB Slack channel, I think he said the Broncos are going in a bit of a purge. Well, clearly, obviously, they did release Russell Wilson earlier today, and they informed him that they will release him. And so, yeah, that's going to be an interesting move. I'm hearing that they may decide to make some other moves. Oh, I'm totally blanking. They released Justin Simmons, their Pro Bowl Pro safety.
That I didn't see.
Couple days ago, they released Justin Simmons as well. So, I mean, yeah, they're really going in a different direction. Curious to see how they're going to reshape the roster there. But just, this was the big news that happened this morning in case you missed it. But Jerry Jeudy, now a member of the Cleveland Browns. Tad, we brought this up before when I made that potential trade that the Bears can make with that number one overall pick, and I sort of packaged together a bunch of picks, and I actually threw Jerry Jeudy in there because he's going into the contract year. So the Bears could have either used him in that contract year, then re-signed him, or used him in that contract year, then let him go, whatever it is. So seems like the Browns are going in that direction, obviously not getting a bunch of picks in return. But yeah, this is a very interesting move. I wouldn't say it's a great move or a fantastic move because, I mean, just clearly with Deshaun Watson, the way that he played last year is just very, I'm not sure whether this is a great move as far as his career choice, but I don't know how much say he had in the trade. So I mean, we'll just leave it there. But just what were your initial reactions when you saw that happen or saw the news of it?
Well, first off, that Justin Simmons thing is shocking.
I'm surprised
I truly did not know that.
We'll get into that topic a little bit later too.
And, me and my friends were talking about this because, shout out to Matt. He's a Bears fan. And we were talking about, like, who's the team most likely to trade up to number one, because I have a group chat with Matt and my other friend, Andrew, who is from Denver. And we were saying, Denver may actually be one of the favorites to move up for number one because there's just so much pressure that Sean Payton is facing after that. I wouldn't say disastrous because he did recover, but after that letdown of a season one with Denver, that doesn't make sense to me to cut Justin Simmons. He is arguably the best safety in football right now. So I get that might be a cap thing, but at the same time, like, you're not in money saving mode, you're in win now mode. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. That part is surprising. The Jeudy trade was interesting because I kind of understand it from the Broncos' perspective, but at the same time, I would not have done it. Where, and according to Ian Rappaport, this was a capital, they're kind of trying to stockpile draft capital, which tells me they're trying to move up.
That seems very likely.
That seems to be what's happening here. But at the same time, it's like, okay, fine, you move up for your quarterback. What's there for him? Tim Patrick is coming off a major injury. We don't know how he's going to, if he's going to be the same guy.
Which confirmed they did decide to re-sign him to a 1-year deal. So, I mean, he is coming back to the Broncos, but exactly like you said, it's just 2 back-to-back season-ending injuries. Is he going to be the same guy? I really just don't know. It's
going to be a lot. That's a big ask of him. You have Cortland Sutton, who is good, but we have seen him struggle in the system. And then after that, you got little Jordan Humphrey, who, to his credit, did step up, but it's like, I don't really trust that guy to be my number 2, and he might have
Marvin Mims as well. So, I mean, it's like,
okay, fair. But he's 5'8".
Still, I know.
I'm taller than that guy. So, the Broncos, like, I don't love it from their standpoint. The Browns, it makes total sense, right? Because like you said, they're stuck with Deshaun Watson, so let's just load up this offense around him and give him zero excuse to be like, no, it's the offense, it's this, it's that. No, man. You got Jerry Jeudy, you got Amari Cooper, you got hopefully Nick Chubb back to his old self. You got no excuse. And plus, you got to remember the Browns do not have a first-round pick. That belongs to the Texans. So I think that it makes sense for them, especially if you're calling me up being like, hey, you have a viable starter. I do this in Madden all the time. You have a viable starter. We'll give him to you for a 4th and 5th round pick. Yeah. Because like the chances of those rounds like really panning out for you are pretty slim. So the Browns totally understand. I would have done the exact same thing. Broncos, they're going to be interesting to watch over the next 2-3 weeks, month. Because I don't really know where they're going with this, but I feel like there's something happening behind the scenes that we just don't know about. Ooh, what if the Broncos are going after Justin Fields?
Could be a possibility. But yeah, based on reports, it seems like Fields' market is very slim, if existed at all. So yeah, very curious as to maybe that's another reason why the Bears have been a little bit slow as far as dealing that pick or deciding what they want to do with that pick. So yeah, that could be a factor as well. But maybe things are going to shape up, like you said, towards the end of the week once they sort of figure out what they want to do in free agency, what other teams are going to do in free agency, and sort of make a decision based off of that. So,
I fully believe, speaking, about over-under, underdog, take note. I guess this isn't really an over-under, but before or after next Thursday, I fully believe by Friday or Saturday, the Chicago Bears will trade the number 1 overall pick.
I think it's possible.
Or Justin Fields. I should clarify that. Or trade Justin Fields. One or the other. Yeah.
Would it be crazy if they did both?
That'd be amazing.
That'd
I'd be so
insane.
here for
That'd
that.
shake up everything.
We would have to go live. If that happens, we would go live.
That would shake up everything. Like, that would be insane if they decide to do that. I really don't think they would,
That
but
would be fantastic.
can't put it past him. I really don't know.
He's been shouting, put me on the show for months now. That may be the thing that finally gets Jay and Matt on the show.
For sure. That would be absolute. We're talking about madness for March Madness. Like, that would be madness for the NFL free agency. All right, Tyler, let's sort of get into some of our predictions here. We got some few topics that we want to get into here. So, obviously, free agency is about signing with potentially new teams, but I think me and Tad wanted to highlight some guys that maybe are better candidates to stay with their current team. So, who's a candidate, Tad, that you think is better suited to re-sign with the team that they just played for?
So before I get to my guide, two things. One, this was surprisingly hard. I was looking at the free agency list.
It was a little difficult.
And I
I'm
was
not
like,
going to lie.
Yeah, it was like Saquon Barkley. No, he should go. And it was like, who was another guy that was like, no, he needs to leave. It was like every single person I hit, I was like, no, you should leave. Like, that's a good call. So the second thing, by the way, being is I love me a good rebound story. Any player who rebounds with the team, I'm like, he needs to stay with that team. They did you a solid. You return the favor. It's a good relationship. Keep it going. And there was very few better examples than Kevin Dotson. And I was like, all right, so Kevin Dotson should absolutely, because that dude was on his way out of the league. And then he went back to he went to the Rams, and he was one of the best guards in football last year. And I was like, he should absolutely go back to the Rams. So I typed in Kevin Dotson to start doing my research. And lo and behold, Kevin Dotson signs a 3-year extension with Los Angeles. So I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay, well, clearly that was a good pick then.
It was.
So yes, excellent A+ re-signing by the Rams. I think that he is going to be a very good anchor for that very young offensive line, surprisingly young offensive line. So Dotson was going to be my pick. And I was like, well, who else should say? Speaking of rebound stories, Baker Mayfield should re-sign
the biggest one. Yep.
with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He absolutely should do this. According to reports, Tampa Bay is going to let him test the open market. I think that's a mistake. I think a QB, kind of needy team that's a little bit outside, like, Las Vegas or Pittsburgh, outside of the draft, order where they can really land one of those top tier teams, names. I really think they're going to throw a lot of money at Baker, and he's going to get tempted to walk away. That's bad both for Baker and Tampa Bay. Let's talk about why. So Baker had this reputation in Cleveland as this, in Oklahoma as well, of this like gunslinger kind of Brett Favre type guy who just doesn't care. Well, you look at what he did in Tampa Bay last season. He had 29 total touchdowns. I was actually shocked. He only had 1 rushing touchdown. I thought he had more than that. Yeah. But still, 29 total touchdowns, only 10 interceptions. That's a very good, that's almost a 3-to-1 ratio. I can do that much math. I know. I was very impressed with myself as well. Thank you. I feel good now. And we'll speak about math because I do some math here in our next segment, and it was very annoying. But you look at, the situation that not only Baker Mayfield was in, this dude was like one bad game away from playing XFL?
Yeah, the XFL, that is officially what it is. Yep.
Yeah. Like, if that comeback with the Los Angeles Rams, speaking of rebounds with the Rams, if that never happened, we would not be talking about him today. So he went from almost out of the league to like, now he has multiple teams pursuing him, but he should go back to Tampa Bay, right? We know he works well in that system. We know that, Tampa Bay doesn't really have any other options. If Kyle Trask was good, and I know I went to bat for Kyle Trask, that was a bad pick.
You did.
Shut up. Shut it.
Multiple times.
All right.
He tried to give you outs, and you doubled down on Kyle Trask.
I lost $5 on Kyle Trask. Fucking Trask. If he was as good as I thought he was, he would have taken over the starter job by now. And I love one of the headlines I saw while I was doing research for this, by the way, was, is it Trask time to take over? I'm like, we're not doing this.
Nope.
I'm like, we're not doing this. So the biggest thing, though, is Tampa Bay's offense is set up as win now. You look at Rachaad White. He only has 2 years left on his rookie deal. Okay, Mike Evans is 31 right now. He is not going to be around for much longer. Hence why he only signed the, 2-year renewal?
Yep, 2 years.
2 years. Chris Godwin, who signed a 3-year contract last year. Well, now we're in the final year of his contract. So there is a lot of expiring contracts on this, on this offense. And it's you can't re-sign everyone. So they are in win now mode in a weak division. More on that later. And I think the biggest thing too is you have to remember, the news dropped just a couple days ago. Tristan Wirfs, his 5th-year option on his rookie deal was just picked up. That guy is one of the best tackles in football. He's going to demand big money next offseason. You can re-sign Baker Mayfield to an extended contract without breaking the bank. This is, and look, I'm not an economic genius, but if there's a bubble, if I've ever seen one, is the current quarterback, contract situation. You see Miami kind of freaking out about this right now. Of we don't want to pay Tua Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes, but we might have to. And with Tampa Bay, you don't face that problem. So you get a long-term quarterback, or at least for the next few years, and you still have the money to re-sign your other players. That's the whole problem with Kansas City is facing right now, is how do we jigsaw together a roster while we're paying Mahomes $70 million a year? Tampa Bay won't have to do that. So Baker, no transition period. You're going to succeed in this situation. Tampa Bay, you got your guy who will keep you competitive.
Yeah, and I thought you'd bring this up, so that's why I didn't interrupt you here. But there were reports that New England has been doing heavy research as far as whether they want to go after Baker Mayfield, because you were talking about he has opportunities outside of Tampa Bay to possibly pursue starting with another team. So, I mean, I'm not saying for sure New England's going to do it, but just clearly they're doing some research as far as the free agent market, as far as the quarterback is concerned. And hey, maybe, Baker Mayfield followed Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. Maybe wants to upstage him in New England too. So it's that's a possibility, especially the further reports have come out of New England. That's they're not all that happy with the analysis and the scouting that they've done on Drake May. They're not fully convinced on Jaden Daniels either. So it's maybe this is a different direction that they go in, but just yeah, I very much agree that he will have options with the season that he had, Pro Bowl quarterback as well. So, I mean, Tampa Bay would be smart to bring him back. I think he would be a good fit with that team as well, based on just continuing chemistry there. But yeah, I'm very surprised that they didn't resign him sooner, but giving him a chance to test free agency, that could come back to bite him.
I think it could. And the reason I didn't bring it up is because I 100% believe New England's interested. But if I'm Baker Mayfield and New England's calling me up, I'm yeah, no, I'm not picking up. Just leave me a voicemail. And it's just because why would he go there? They have no weapons. I know they just, if I'm not mistaken, they just signed an extension with Hunter Henry. I think Henry re-signed.
They did, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the best weapon they got. And they're losing half their offensive line in free agency. In all likelihood.
That's true. That's true.
It's just if I'm a quarterback, no, I'm okay. Thank you.
That's fair. That's fair. But I mean, I just wanted to accentuate the point that it's just he's got other options.
There are teams.
We'll see what exactly happens there as far as how it's all going to play out. So I'm going to shift to another first round pick, actually another former Brown as well. And that's Odell Beckham Jr. of the Baltimore Ravens.
I like that one.
He was coming back off of injury this past season, so he didn't play the full 17-game season. I think even when he came back, he wasn't playing the full stats, but overall, once he was able to get a lot healthier, he looked very comfortable in that offense. I know it was pretty much through the passing offense, it was a lot of Zay Flowers. He emerged as that rookie receiver that, Lamar Jackson was relying on quite a bit. But I think once Odell Beckham Jr. was healthy, he was getting a lot of targets in that offense because, I mean, you look at him and he was actually second on the team in both targets as well as receiving yards. So that is good for Odell Beckham, but I think that also speaks pretty poorly about the receiver options outside of Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham Jr. Because I mean, we talked about this before, but Rashad Bateman has not quite lived up to expectations. They drafted Devin Duvernay. He has not quite lived up to expectations as well. They signed Nelson Aguilar. I know he scored a touchdown in their playoff game, but outside of that, he just hasn't been at all consistent.
I forgot he was a Raven until he did that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's throughout his entire career, he hasn't been as consistent as you want a receiver. So I mean, obviously they got Mark Andrews. Isaiah Likely has been fantastic when Mark Andrews was down. So maybe they'll sort of use more twin tight end sets to leverage both of those guys. I really don't know, but the receiver seems to be a bit of an issue. And even though they have a, quote unquote, more running quarterback, not even quote unquote, he is a running quarterback. That's sort of how
I was just about to say that. Get rid of the quotes.
That's how he makes his hay in this offense for sure. They sort of tailor the offense around that too. It's but you still need some passing options because with the emergence of Zay Flowers, Lamar Jackson looked a little bit more comfortable as a passer. You bring back Odell Beckham Jr., who's able to sort of like, maybe he signs another 1-year deal, because that's exactly what happened here in Baltimore. Maybe he signs another 1-year deal, prove that he could be healthy, and then he cashes in next free agency. Or, I mean, he's kind of towards the end of his career anyway, so it's like, why not just sign a long-term contract with the Ravens? They're very, successfully run organization. They're contenders for the playoffs every single year. They were in the AFC Championship game last season, so I mean, it's just like, you're in a good situation. So it's like, why would you want to leave that just to potentially make a few more bucks? Like, why don't you stay with a contender, an offense that you're familiar with, and just, give Lamar Jackson more options? I'm pretty sure the front office, will prioritize that. But just him leaving, I just don't think would be the best option. I feel like him re-signing with the Ravens will give the Ravens another weapon, obviously, and just give him a chance to sort of like capture back some of that magic that he was sort of displaying early in his career. So yeah, we'll see, but I think he's probably a smarter candidate to re-sign as opposed to leaving.
No, I think you nailed it with that, towards the end. What you said is he's getting older. I think his days is like the number one receiver, the guy who can carry that core. It's done. And there's nothing wrong with that, but he is the perfect number 2 receiver I would want on my team. And plus, I know he gets all this crap for being like a media distraction and, is he a diva and all this stuff. That felt like more of like media generated than it did him actually being a distraction. No, was the boat thing great? No. The boat thing was probably his biggest mistake. But the whole like, oh my God, he kicked a kicking net. Who cares?
Yeah.
I'd rather he kick a kicking net than because he's pissed off rather than just like, no, oh well, we're losing. Okay. Like I'd much rather have the former than the latter. Yeah. So no, I think he actually could be a really good locker room presence, like you said, with a very young receiving core. And it's exactly like what you said as well. As I feel like we've been mocking or saying the Ravens need a receiver for like a decade now.
It's true.
Like they've always needed a receiver. Going back to when they had like Anquan Bolden, we were like, yeah, they need someone to take over for him. And so I think that, it's just, if it's a good thing for both sides, just stay there. And on top of everything else, like I said, the media loves going after Odell. So, God, I feel like Trump right now, like the media, but unfortunate. But Baltimore is one of those markets that's big enough. Like you said, it's a contender. They're going to get a lot of attention. He gets his due. But it's also not so big that like every little thing he does is going to be scrutinized.
Very, very true.
And so that's just, if I'm Odell, that's a very tempting offer as well. I can win, and people aren't going to be talking about me on First Take because I, threw a water ball. Okay, I'm in. Like that sounds very tempting to me. So I just, this is a match made in heaven, and I think 1-year prove-it deal would be very interesting because if he does blow up next offseason, I could see a team being like, how about this? Depending on what the Giants do. Giants reunion next offseason if he does well.
That would be interesting. For sure. But it's so funny. I think I shared this story on the podcast before, but that boat incident that he had, not incident, but just like that famous picture that happened with the New York Giants and the receiving core there. He tried to do something similar with the Baltimore Ravens. And I remember all of social media was just like, don't go on the boat because this was during their playoff run as well. So it was just like, do not go on that boat. And so
touch that boat.
I just thought that was hilarious. So hilarious.
Oh, man.
All right, Tad. So before we get into like our free agency predictions, I know we're going to do our defensive episode later this week, but I do want to bring this up because
Matabuco,
not even close.
Matabiki.
So we talked about the draft class for the 2024 safety position not being all that strong this year. Like, I mean, there's still a lot of question marks as far as who's the best prospect, whether you could get a really dependable talent in this year's draft class. Well, I think problem has been solved in free agency because, I mean, you name it, that free agent safety is on the market this year because I already brought up Justin Simmons. He was released by the Denver Broncos, but you have to remember that the Bills went through a little bit of a purge as well.
Yeah, so they released that.
Tre'Davious White, I know it's a quarter, but they released him. They released Jordan Poyer a little days before that. Budda Baker is a free agent. You got Eddie Jackson that was just released by the Chicago Bears. The Seahawks, they released both Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs. I know we can say
the Diggs one was surprising. Adams was not surprising. Diggs,
I was about to say. I was like, the Adams one is like he hasn't been playing all the way that he has been back to his Jets days, but Quandre Diggs has been a Pro Bowl safety the past couple of seasons, so releasing him was quite surprising. Kevin Byard was released by the Philadelphia Eagles. You got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is a free agent, so I mean he's still very young and so can do a lot of things. And then not as big of a name, but he was a very productive safety for the Washington Commanders. Cameron Curl is actually set to be a free agent as well. So, I mean, if you need a safety, like maybe you can't get him through the draft, but this safety class in free agency, like I said, you have your pick of the litter when it comes to upgrading the secondary there. So, I mean, yeah, just really quick thoughts on the safety class here. Because like I said, we'll save this for our defensive free agency episode, which will happen later this week. But just, yeah, really quick thoughts on all those crazy potential signings at the safety position here.
So I'll say this is I was listening to, my favorite podcast a couple days ago, and they had Mina Kimes on, and they asked her, like, what's her main takeaway from this draft class? And she said, this is the best draft class at receiver I've ever seen. She's like, I got to
it was very good.
Yeah. She's like, I got to like the 10th guy, and he's just as good as like guy number 3. And I was sitting in my car like, yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. It feels like the same, like this is the best free agency safety class I've ever seen. You get to the 10th guy, it's just as good as the number 2 guy. And like you said, is with like, Gardner Johnson, Eddie Jackson. I think Simmons is around 30, maybe 31 at this point. I may just be doing that because of his number. But none of these guys are like really old. Like these are all guys you can lock down. Cameron Curl's like 24.
Oh, he's very
like
young.
That. Yeah. Cameron Curl's, this is him coming off his rookie contract. So like not only, yes, can you get your starting safety, that you need for next season, you can lock him down for, the next, 4 years at a pretty cheap price. Because remember, if the marketplace is this crowded, your what's the negotiating power goes down as a safety, because you're just like, no, I want $15 million a year. Okay, well, this guy over there who's pretty much the same as you is asking for 10, so we're gonna go with him. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. But no, if I'm a team needing a safety, Colts, I would be making some calls right now.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll cover all that in our later episode when we do our free agency defensive preview here. But let's continue with the offense here, Tad. Let's actually get into some players that may actually leave in free agency. So what's a realistic prediction that you may have? Because, I mean, in a later topic, we're going to talk about, just our best fit. So we're going to talk about, regardless of the cap situation, regardless of team fit, just this is a match made to have between player and team here. This one's a more realistic. So taking the cap into account, taking, a fit as well. Like, they have a hole there or something like that. But just like, what's a realistic signing that you can expect to happen once Tuesday hits?
Oh, trust me, I took that cap into account with this one. Freaking math.
All right, let's hear it.
Look, this is the most like heavily rumored free agency move, and so it's nothing like exciting. I'm not going to be, saying anything people haven't thought about before, but we got to talk about it. So let's talk about it. I honestly, and it was funny because when I first saw this move, I was like, I don't like it. And the more I kind of sat on it, I'm like, actually, this does make sense. I do think Kirk Cousins is going to end up as an Atlanta Falcon.
All right. Interesting.
So I think that this is the most realistic option, because apparently those are like, he has other suitors, but like it's either from the sounds of it, it's either going to be Minnesota or Atlanta, the one or the other.
Fair.
And yes, there was that report that he is, getting his family ready to move to Atlanta and everything. Like when there's smoke, there's fire. There's clearly interest here. So let's talk about why this is realistic. Is one, Atlanta, there was another report, by the way, to that Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons, is pushing very hard to get Kirk Cousins. This is a team that wants to compete, and they understand that Desmond Ridder is not going to be that option for them, which you and I both started the season by saying is like, and he showed it. He's a great backup quarterback. I think that Desmond Ridder is the next kind of Tyrod Taylor, where it's bouncing from team to team to team. Like if our guy goes down, we know you can at least win us some. So I think that the interest on Atlanta's side is very real. The one hang up is that Kirk Cousins apparently wants, a contract that is heavy in guarantees. He does not want an incentive-based contract. At 36 years old, I cannot blame the guy. You get your bread. And you know that, like, no matter what happens, especially after he just blew out his heel, like, no matter what happens, you get that money. I don't blame him whatsoever. So looking at the Falcons cap situation, they have roughly $35 million in cap space right now. Actually, I'm wrong. It jumped up to 40 because they cut Jonnu Smith, who, by the way, just signed with Miami. So they're floating at about 40 right now. So I did my research. If they cut Taylor Heineke, Mike Hughes, Lorenzo Carter, and Richie Grant, another safety to throw in there, by the way, that could actually skyrocket up to about $60 million in cap space. So then I continue to look it up, and apparently, according to reports, Kirk Cousins is interested in discussing a 2-year, $100 million contract. Not bad, right? But he wants it fully guaranteed.
Yeah.
So I did the math, and it turns out that would eat $25 million out of the Falcons' 2024 cap space. So if the Falcons make those cuts, and other than, I would say, Lorenzo Carter and Richie James, those cuts hurt, but Mike Hughes and Richie James.
Richie James is a free agent, but he doesn't play for the Falcons.
Yes. Yeah. So Richie Grant and Lorenzo Carter, like those two cuts would kind of hurt, but Mike Hughes and Taylor Heineke, who really cares? So that would eat about $25 million of the $60 million they would have. It's possible to do, and it makes a lot of sense for both sides. Kirk Cousins at 36, he wants to compete, and I'm not sure the Vikings are really in a position to do that. It looks like the Packers are going to remain competitive. The Detroit Lions were, one half away from making the Super Bowl, thanks to Murr. And I'm going to blame you for that. They could have given us a better game than the freaking Niners gave us.
Don't even start with that.
I will. I absolutely will. Because
do not do it right now.
Bored me to death during that Super Bowl. But, you got the Packers, the Lions, and now it looks like the Bears, that they play their cards right, are going to be, pretty competitive pretty quickly. So if I'm Kirk Cousins, I'm like, I could do that in the Colts, or I could go to Atlanta, which has a very weak division, has Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. They are ready to compete right away. So, I mean, I'll be interested to hear if you agree, but like that, Atlanta is the much more tempting offer if I'm 36 years old. And last thing I'll say about this is a lot of these Atlanta Falcon fans I'm seeing on Twitter saying like, Kirk Cousins, he just blew out his heel. We're not sure if he's going to be the same coming back. I would agree if he was a run-first quarterback like Lamar is. That dude is the most stationary guy left in the NFL at this point. I am not that worried about his heel.
It's actually so funny that you're talking about the heel, because there was a social media post that was going viral for a bit where he was roughhousing with his sons, and one of his younger sons was standing on the injured Achilles.
Oh.
And so you could clearly hear him say, it's like, don't stand on my Achilles. And then the son is just like, what happened to your Achilles? It's just something that made me laugh, but it was just like, yeah, clearly, obviously, he's still rehabbing it, so that is an issue. But you 100% laid it out perfectly, where it's just like, he's not a running quarterback. He doesn't need that, to be 100% to like get him around and move. He just needs that to be able to plant. Obviously, have a strong throwing base, or anything, which should be fine. Should be no issues there. In regards to the fit with Atlanta, I love this pick. I absolutely do, because I was under the assumption that Minnesota was going to do whatever they could to bring it back, and I still think that's very much in the cards. But just, yeah, if there was a fit outside of Minnesota, like Atlanta would be one of those definitely top spots, because exactly like you laid out, they have all the pieces on offense. They're all young talent that just, unfortunately, Arthur Smith, for whatever reason, didn't want to utilize it the best that they could. And so now you got a guy like Kirk Cousins, you got Raheem Morris as the head coach. Like, I think they're going to go in that direction as far as like, yes, let us use this talent that we invested heavy capital in and get the most out of it. Like, I think they could be a very underrated, explosive offense next year if that does happen. Their defense was really good last year. Not really good, but it was the better side of the unit compared to the offense. And so I think you have that defense that I think you build up a little bit with some draft picks, obviously, maybe a couple more underrated free agent signing moves. Now you have a very contending team in, exactly like I said, a very, weak division in the NFC South. And so I 100% agree that if Kirk Cousins is not going to re-sign in Minnesota, like if they're not going to throw everything that you can to keep him there, Atlanta would be a very good spot and would all of a sudden make Atlanta a very dark horse candidate to, make a run in the playoffs with a veteran quarterback like that. So I wouldn't put it past him.
100%. And I'm so glad you said that about Minnesota. Like, I would be throwing everything, because without him, like, they're in no position to get any type of, I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, apparently the rumors are that it's like, if they don't go for Kirk Cousins, their options were Sam Darnold, or they were going to trade for Trey Lance. Like, that doesn't excite me at all.
No.
As much as I love former Niners, like I can name a lot of former Niners in the league, those are not guys that I want to be even just a bridge quarterback. I'm sorry, but just like, I saw Trey Lance, it was not all that great. Sam Darnold was not bad, but still, to be a bridge situation there, I think it was more of a fit with Kyle Shanahan compared to him making some progress. So I don't know, maybe it'll work out, but just seeing those reports, I was like, Yeah, I'd rather bring back Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. These are not exciting enough for me.
And apparently that's where the disconnect is like I said, is Kirk Cousins wants a very guaranteed heavy contract, and
Yeah,
that's
fair.
where the hang up is Minnesota's like, we're not doing that. If I'm why? And because on top of everything that we mentioned, if y'all lose Kirk Cousins and you think, and if you're Justin Jefferson and you're like, oh yay, Sam Darnold. If I'm Justin Jefferson, I am like planning my exit out of Minnesota right now if Kirk Cousins does
100%.
not come back.
If that gets confirmed, Atlanta Falcons make a play or sign Kirk Cousins to a deal or whatever, it's like, yeah, Justin Jefferson is good as gone. He's
no,
done staying.
100%. Exactly. So if I'm Minnesota, I don't know. I understand why you're being like picky about this. And another thing that I forgot to mention as well is Falcons' new offensive coordinator, Zach Taylor, Sean McVay guy. Kirk Cousins' most successful years of his career came under a Sean McVay, esque offense. And so
True.
that scheme fit as well just makes sense. And Kirk Cousins is going to be a very, very interesting player. And on top of all of this, if the Falcons do get him, they can hold on to, I want to say, what are they, number 6 in the draft? Are they after the Chargers?
Like top 10 pick.
They're shortly after the Chargers. They can use that on defense because, like I said, like they're going to lose some guys on defense. Now they don't need to worry about anything because that offensive line is also surprisingly solid. As I was doing my research today, I was like, that's a pretty good offensive line. So yeah, you can spend a top 10 pick in a very defensively loaded draft on a good player there. It makes too much sense. It like I said, at first, my first reaction when I saw Kirk Cousins to Atlanta, I was like, I hate that. The more I started looking into it, I'm like, no, this actually makes sense.
Exactly. So I got a pick here that's a little bit boring as well. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I think it would be a perfect fit for both the player as well as the team that needs him. And it's a realistic signing as well. Laken Tomlinson, the offensive guard, I think he would sign with the San Francisco 49ers. So I know this is a homer pick here. But it was more realistic here because it's like the New York Jets ended up releasing Tomlinson just a couple weeks ago in a cost-cutting move. They want to rebuild the offensive line, get a little bit younger as well. So I think this is where Tomlinson sort of made a name for himself because I don't know if you remember, Ted, but he was a first-round pick by the Detroit Lions back in 2015.
Was he really?
I want to say
he was a Lion. I did not know that. At the
very end of the first round of that 2015 draft, if I remember correctly, he was a first-round pick by the Detroit Lions. He just unfortunately wasn't a fit there. So right when Kyle Shanahan actually became the head coach in 2017, they made a trade in the offseason to acquire him, and he was just a starter for that team ever since Kyle Shanahan was the head coach up until he left in free agency. But just you look at the fact that, I mean, we're talking about the Super Bowl, but this is the reason the Niners lost the Super Bowl. It's just at the very end, in overtime, there was a miscommunication on the right side of that line that led to Chris Jones. Chris Jones to come through the line unblocked and absolutely threw Purdy off his timing. He had Brandon Ayuk wide open. He had Jawad Jennings wide open, but he didn't have enough time to make a clean throw. So that's what led to them ultimately kicking that field goal. And then, obviously, we know the rest. We're not going to talk about it.
Learn the rules, Shanahan.
That's not even a rules thing, but no, please.
No,
don't
he absolutely.
Don't get me started this. No. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. No. We're not doing this.
We're doing this in the summer.
So Laken Tomlinson, I think you come in, you add him to the left side of the offensive line. Yes, I know their left side of the offensive line was already good, where they have Aaron Banks and they have Trent Williams. Now you move Aaron Banks to the right side. You got Laken Tomlinson at the left position. Now you got Trent Williams at the left tackle position. Jesus Christ, that is a very strong veteran group on the left side of the offensive line. You shore up the right side of the offensive line with Aaron Banks in the guard position. You upgrade the tackle position through the draft. Tad, can you imagine Marius Mims drafted by the Niners at the very end of the first round? Like, that would be the perfect match there. You add him to the right tackle position. The center Jake Brendel was pretty good. I think we could go with that. Maybe they draft a center later in the draft, like your guy Cedric Van Pran out of Georgia later in the rounds there. That would be a great pick for sure. But just regardless, just now you shored up both sides of the offensive line. You're already in a Super Bowl contending window because Brock Purdy's playing on that rookie deal. 7th, Mr. Irrelevant pick rookie deal. So we're taking advantage of that right now. So this is the time to sort of once again, go all in and take advantage. You got Christian McCaffrey. You got all these young pieces. So it's like you add a veteran piece like Laken Tomlinson. He wants to go back to ring chasing instead of all the stuff that he went through with New York. So I bet you he would want to come back and do that as well. So yeah, it's not a exactly sexy signing, but I think it's a very good signing by San Francisco to really upgrade their offensive line, bring it back to where he made his only Pro Bowl of his career. That was with San Francisco.
No, 100%. I do this all the time in Madden because it works in real life. Is if I start a franchise, I usually take over like losing teams. For example, right now I'm building up the St. Louis Sentinels.
St. Louis Sentinels. No,
I relocated Carolina.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay.
So the first thing I did is I started trading and signing offensive linemen. It's a cliche, but you win championships through the trenches. That's how you do it. Exactly like what you said is like what screwed up your shot at the first title in 30 years? The offensive line. Like it almost always comes down to that. That's when Kansas City realized when they lost Tampa Bay, their offensive line wasn't strong enough because Tampa Bay just rushed Mahomes the entire time. And they've done nothing in the offseason since other than investing in the offensive line. That's why all the receivers are shit because
he ran like 500 yards.
He ran 500 yards
like that. Yeah.
But he only had like 5 actual rushing yards.
It was something like that. It was so ridiculous. I remember we talked about it on the podcast when we did our Super Bowl recap show, but just, it was insane. Just like, and then, they went and signed Joe Tootie and they drafted Creed Humphrey and they drafted Trey Smith. And it was just it was just amazing. And so I think the Niners are in a very similar situation. If they could sign Lincoln Thompson, they could do something very similar to what Kansas City did that offseason and really upgrade their offensive line this year.
Good side. You're right. A little boring, but like if I saw that would be an A grade. The last thing I'll say about this is I laughed because imagine who were you guys playing when like the pregame fight broke out and then Trent Williams just like came running down. Everybody was like, we're done. Fight's over. Do you guys remember that? It was like November or December.
I want to say it was Philly. I can't remember that.
It was either Philly
or
Washington.
But I can't remember the team either.
It was for those of you who don't know, it was hilarious. Like a pregame scuffle broke out. It actually looked like it was about to escalate. And then Trent Williams just like came barreling down on the sideline. And all the players were like, on both teams were like, yep, now it's over. Trent's here. We're done. Now imagine that with Mims in there. Like not only is that the best offensive line in football, but that's also the scariest tackle duo of just like, if I'm trying to start anything, it is not with those two people.
And then especially like down the road when Trent Williams retires, then you got Marius Mims learning from him and then just shifted to the left side. Like, dude, I love that. I would love that. But we'll talk about that in a later draft episode. So, Tad, let's close this out with our final topic that we bring up here for free agency is that, let's just talk about your best fit in free agency, regardless of cap situation, regardless of whether the team needs this position as far as like a priority need. Just who do you think a free agency should sign with the team? And it would be like, yes, chef's kiss, sort of like this is a great signing sort of thing where it's just like everybody's talking about it like I can't believe they did this. This is a very good signing. So who do you got?
This would be the most reluctant chef's kiss of all time, but it's Saquon to Houston.
We talked about this one, but
I know. That's not my actual pick, by the way.
Okay,
it's just but yes, we've already talked about that. That is probably the most popular free agency prediction going on right now, right along Kirk Cousins to Atlanta. From all reports I've read, that's going to happen. Is that there's mutual interest. Houston has the cap space to sign him. I think he's going to end up in Houston. God damn it, that's a perfect fit. So that leads me to my actual pick because this team it's funny. Every year there's a team where our fan base it's like, oh, we could get this guy, and like the fan base really wants it, but you just know it's not going to happen. And that is the Chicago Bears. They really, really want Saquon Barkley. Unfortunately, like I said, he's probably going to go to Houston. Yeah, so I was thinking about what are some other running backs that could fit in Chicago's system. And I really thought about, and look, Chicago has $60 million to spend. They have the 4th or 5th most money to spend this offseason. But they should still be smart about it, right? Just because you have it doesn't mean you need to spend it. So I think they should look for guys that can get a little bit of discount on. And that's why I really like Tony Pollard to the Chicago Bears. I almost said Pollard again. I had a pause there. I was like, damn it. But I really like this because he's coming off a somewhat disappointing season. He still had over 1,000 yards rushing. However, he only had 6 touchdowns. Not any receiving touchdowns. And just about 300 yards receiving. However, Pollard is still pretty young. He's under 30. And he is the dual kind of running back threat that would really fit in Chicago's system. Because, Amir, do you want to guess the last time Chicago had – I tried to do it over-under, but I couldn't quite make it work. When was the last time Chicago had a 1,000-yard rusher that was not a quarterback?
Was it David Montgomery?
It was David Montgomery. Do you want to guess what year?
David Montgomery, not last year, because obviously he was with the Lions. The year before?
Nope.
So that would
2020.
be 2020.
It was even further back. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it was even further back than the year before last. So that's bad, man. You can't go 3 years and not have a running back get over 1,000 yards. So they desperately need to support. I don't care if it's Justin Fields or Caleb Williams or whoever the hell they decide to roll with as their next quarterback, but you need to give him more support. And that was something that we were saying even last year after it was clear that Herbert wasn't the guy. You want to run with Herbert, fine. That was their decision. He had about 600 yards. He's a great complimentary back. He is not the number one guy. Tony Pollard is the number one guy when utilized correctly. I think that Chicago can be the team where he has that dual threat ability of like, okay, fine. We want to go more passing situation. He has that. You want to go more, kind of shifty running. He has that as well. And you look at what Eberflus saw while he was in Indy. He understands that, the poor man's, that Jonathan Taylor, like a good dual threat running back, has a massive impact on this offense. And honestly, it's not the perfect comparison, but Pollard is kind of a poor man's JT. So I think that this makes sense, and you can get him at a little bit of a discount, so you're not totally breaking the bank for a running back.
It's not a bad fit, but I don't know if Chicago's going to prioritize a running back through free agency specifically, because Khalil Herbert, I very much wanted him to be the number one guy there. I really liked his running style. He looked really good, but just unfortunately just didn't materialize. We'll see whether that can sort of happen here in the next season. But they did draft in the 4th round last year, Roschon Johnson out of Texas. And
they don't like him apparently.
But I do know that they gave him a lot of play as far as I think they're going to give him a little bit of a leash here to see whether he could take the role this coming year. And then also you have to remember that they signed Deontay Foreman in the free agency from Carolina, and he was able to play some bits for them too. So it's like, I think they're going with that committee approach, and maybe they just add through it again through the draft as opposed through free agency, like to use some of that money to maybe spread to the defense, maybe the offensive line. I don't know about that. Maybe go after one of those big free agency receivers like a Calvin Ridley or something like that. But I'm not hating this pick. They definitely could use that upgrade at running back, but I don't know if they're going to invest a lot of money to then pay a guy like Tony Pollard and or Josh Jacobs or like somebody else like that to upgrade the running back position, when maybe with the, if they draft Caleb Williams, if they stick with Justin Fields, they want to go a little bit more pass heavy. So it's like, I don't know if they want to invest in running back. So while I like the fit, I just don't see it happening for sure.
See, for me, but that's why I went with Pollard, right? Is because I agree. If it was Barkley, I would be like, no, I don't see him, because Barkley's going to cost a lot of money. Like, I don't see them shelling out of like, this is our big get, because you're right. It is not their biggest need is running back. However, I think that is kind of the mindset Chicago's been in the past couple of years. Have been like, we got a committee. We're good. We got this guy. We're good. And like, it's just like really hasn't been working out. So it's like, just go for the guy. And like, who's going to be cheap? Josh Jacobs, who just like, he did have a very good end to his season. So I think his price is going to be a little higher. Or Pollard, where, it's there. You want to speak about deep, free agency classes. This running back class is very, very good. And there's going to be an odd man out. And I think it's either going to be Ekeler or it's going to be Pollard. And it's going to be it's definitely going to be Ekeler. Someone's going to get him on the cheap because he had a terrible season last year, but I don't think Pollard's going to demand as much money as people think. So if you can get Pollard for a good deal, I think that's exactly why, you should do it, because he is good. And I don't think he's going to actually go for as much as people are expecting.
That's fair. That's a fair point. So, yeah, I like the fit, but like I said, I just don't think Chicago will prioritize a running back in free agency. But if you get him on a cheap deal, then I 100% think that would be a good move for sure. So, actually, speaking about Austin Ekeler, that will close out today's episode, because that's actually where I want to go. His former team in the Los Angeles Chargers. I think they signed a big running back, and I think they signed Josh Jacobs. I think this would be a fit here.
In division.
Exactly. That was going to be my closing point. But let's start on the fact that new head coach Jim Harbaugh, Tad, it's no secret, the guy likes to run the football.
Yes,
if you look at the 4 seasons in the 9 seasons that he coached at the University of Michigan, he had an offense that ranked in the top 30 when it comes to rushing attempts per game. If you look at the 4 seasons that he was a head coach for the San Francisco 49ers, he ranked top 10 every single season in rushing attempts, including 2 seasons where he was top 5. So, this guy likes to pound the football with the rock there. It's going to be a little bit jarring to see somebody besides Austin Ekeler in the Chargers backfield, but it seems like that's just a relationship that is
That's
tarnished.
it's
It is
soured.
faded. It is not going to be a situation that can be repaired because honestly, Austin Ekeler back in this offense with Jim Harbaugh, I would have loved to see that, but just it seems like it's not going to happen. So then I went in a different direction, and I exactly thought like you just laid out, where it's like, why not poach from your own division? Make your team better, but make a team in your division a lot worse by taking a guy that is 2 years removed for not even 2 years removed, 1 year removed. This happened in 2021. Josh Jacobs led the league in rushing yards with 1,653 rushing yards. So, I mean, getting that guy to now this Chargers backfield where it's like they want to run the football with Jim Harbaugh. Greg Roman is the offensive coordinator again. So it's like they want to emphasize the run first. I know they have a very good quarterback in Justin Herbert, so they may want to pass more, but still, Jim Harbaugh likes to run the football because if you look at this here, Tad, during his years in San Francisco, Frank Gore, the running back during that time, he was 28 going in the 4 seasons there, so he got to his early 30s, but he had over 1,100 rushing yards every single season under Jim Harbaugh. This includes 1,100 rushing yards and at least eight rushing touchdowns in those first 3 seasons from 2011 to 2013. So 2011, 2012, and 2013, he had 1,100 rushing yards at least and at least 8 rushing touchdowns. So Josh Jacobs is going to be younger than Frank Gore was when he was being coached by Jim Harbaugh during his Niner years. So Josh Jacobs is going to be coming in at 26. Frank Gore is 28 during his time in San Francisco. So a lot more tread on the tires. He's a lot younger, so he could probably last a lot longer. So he can get a pretty good deal here to really live out his career here at Los Angeles here. And it's just, like I said, I think the philosophy that he has there, where just Jim Harbaugh really just wants to emphasize the run, maybe go away for the pass. There's all these rumors about them possibly releasing Mike Williams. I know there's, Keenan Allen is still there. So it's like still got some good weapons, but just like, yeah, Josh Jacobs to this offense feels like it's a great fit for both the team as well as Josh Jacobs, as well as for all you fantasy players. He would be an absolute great pick in fantasy football too. So Josh Jacobs to the Chargers, I feel like, I don't know for sure whether it'll happen, but I think Jim Harbaugh may prioritize the running game. So one of those free agent running backs, if it's not Josh Jacobs, somebody's going to sign in Los Angeles because he wants to emphasize the run for sure.
Couple reactions to that. First off, you did have one factual inaccuracy. Usually we handle this stuff behind the scenes, but it's just, I have to tell you, Frank Gore has never been 28. That man has been 40 since 2000.
It was actually very cool. So I'm watching the combine, right? And Jim Harbaugh was actually at the combine. Who was he talking to? Frank Gore, because Frank Gore was there watching his son. So
and he's really still averaging 3 yards a rush, even at the combine.
He probably could have done all those drills better than some of these young guys out there. But just, yeah, Frank Gore, I love the guy.
That man has been 35 ever since
also,
he
can you
graduated
imagine if Jim
Miami.
Harbaugh decides to draft his son as like a backup?
That would be interesting.
That would be crazy cool.
But you know what? I love everything you laid out because a very popular, prediction I've been seeing is my boy, Tony Pollard, being, going to the Chargers because everyone's like, oh, he fit the system. They're thinking of the Chargers the last couple of years. But when you look at Harbaugh's system, he definitely likes running backs that can catch the ball, but he doesn't utilize the dual threat ability nearly as much.
Extent, yeah.
Exactly. Nearly as much as people are used to. And, exactly. You look at Frank Gore, you look at, and I'm not making this draft comparison before people start yelling at me. Blake Corum, like Josh Jacobs runs much more similarly, there we go, to Blake Corum than Tony Pollard does. And so I think that, Jacobs is a more physical runner. Like you say, he's only 26 years old. So you have more time to kind of, utilize his abilities. And this just makes too much sense to me. Like the only other running back that would be a better fit is Saquon Barkley. But like we talked about, Los Angeles is in cap hell. They cannot afford Barkley or really any big time guy as well. And it's going to be interesting. They have enough space. They can create enough space to go after one big guy. And I think you're right. I think that, and actually it's funny, spoiler for our mock draft that's going to come out in the next couple of weeks is I've moved off my Brock Bowers to Chargers prediction because Jim Harbaugh also does not utilize the tight end all that much. So I think that's
very true.
Actually, this makes perfect sense. Our one big guy is going to be our running back, and we're going to build up that offensive line through the draft. I think number 5 is going to be an offensive lineman.
A lot of people are actually predicting that now. Like Joe Alt to
Mhm.
the Los Angeles Chargers at number 5 seems a very likely scenario here. So, but yeah, like you talked about, Tad, we'll talk about that in a future episode when we do our post free agency mock draft for sure. So look for that in a couple of weeks. And guys, that will actually close out today's episode. We're actually talking about future episodes. But yeah, guys, best way you can find out about all those future episodes is make sure following us on all our social media handles there. You got us on Twitter. You got me at Undecide23. You got Tad and Tad Decide94. Got the show handle at the Decide Guys. And of course on Instagram at the Decide Guys as well. And wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe to the podcast as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. But guys, that's the best way you can keep up to date with all of our podcast episodes because yeah, Combine is done. We're getting into free agency. We're going to be doing our position rankings for all the NFL draft positions. We're going to be doing a couple more mock drafts as well. But just like, yeah, we're going to be loaded with a lot of draft content, off-season content during these next couple of months. And if you want us to target anything in specific, like hit us up on those social media handles. We'd love to talk about something that you have on your mind, whether it comes to your team and their draft situation. What do you think about your team and your free agency aspirations? Like, I mean, we're there to do all the research for you and give you a good answer as far as what a team might do in free agency and or the draft and what they may decide to strategize when it comes to the offseason here, which will happening on Tuesday. So guys, please hit us up. Let us know your thoughts. Besides, giving us support, make sure you're supporting our parent network at LAFB Network. They're giving you a lot of great content. We're talking about the Chargers here. They do the Chargers and the Rams when it comes to the NFL level, and you got the Bruins and the Trojans at the college level. So I mean, lots of great content, a lot of great news surrounding all 4 of those teams. So give them all support on their socials and go to the website, read all the great articles because, guys, without them, there would be no us at all. So, guys, we thank them so much for giving us this opportunity. And to all of you guys who are supporting us by listening to the podcast, watching the videos, interacting with us on social media, I mean, just anything and everything that you're doing, we can't thank you enough.
And Murr, I know you've been doing it because you've been texting me the last couple of days, but he started scouting.
Sure.
2 of my favorite words come this time of year. Spring break is here for me. I got nothing to do for the next week. And I told him, I said, I am sitting down and I am scouting my butt off this week. So you know what? Our draft knowledge, our draft, analysis is going to just skyrocket over the next couple of days or the next couple of weeks. So if you have any questions about draft stuff, feel free to hit us up on those socials. Like Amir said, if you have any questions about, if you're in a dynasty fantasy football league, do not forget this is a fantasy football first podcast. So if you have any fantasy questions, let us know. I know a lot of your drafts happen, dynasty drafts happen after the actual draft. So if you need help prepping for that, we got your back. So be sure to hit us up there on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. And please stay safe.